Today's guest on the Winning Teams podcast is a real honor for me. He is a writer of many, many books that I have found to be absolutely extraordinary down through the years. And we're focusing on his most recent book, which is Leading with Character. And the tagline is 10 minutes a day to a brilliant legacy. As Jim Loehr is such a prolific writer, but he is also has done such fantastic work in the whole area of high performance, and he is just a worldwide expert in that space. We talk about what it means to win. We talk about what it means to develop the character, the work that goes in to developing character. We talk about understanding how our brain filters information that comes in, how we can use that to actually help ourselves or to get in our way. But it is really, truly, for me, one of the transformational interviews that I have done and that I've listened to, because Jim is such an expert in his field, and he just brings this message home so strong about if you really want to leave a definitive legacy after you from your life, then he has the path to do that. And the book is all about the process and the approach to take that, and the step-by-step approach to take that, to ensure that you are leaving the legacy that you want to leave. So I really, really encourage everybody to listen to this. If you can, listen with a pen and paper so that you can take notes through it. I know that even during the interview, even though I prepared for the interview, I was scribbling down some things that Jim says. So absolutely phenomenal content, absolutely phenomenal. And I really recommend that you go and buy both the book and the journal that goes with it. So please sit back and enjoy the fantastic Jim Loehr. Jim, it's truly a great honor to have you here today on the Winning Teams podcast. I really want to thank you for coming along. We're thrilled to have you here.
John, I'm very excited about having this conversation with you, and I really hope we can create some value for your audience, and I'm privileged to do this.
Well, the reason I reached out to you some time ago was because I just finished reading your book, Leading with Character, and it certainly resonated. And I was just saying to you beforehand, I also did go on the Personal Credo Journal, and I'd have to say, I thought that was just going to be a nice, comfortable ride, and I have to admit, it didn't quite turn out. It really has challenged me, and it's been fantastic. But it has. But you have been the author of many books, and I want to talk about Leading with Character. But I said maybe you might give people just a little bit of background on yourself and your journey to here.
Yeah, so I'm a performance psychologist. I started in community mental health. I was chief psychologist and executive director of a very large community mental health center that served the whole central and southern part of Colorado. But I got involved with an exercise physiologist by the name of Dr. Joe Vigil, who really started helping me see, and this was in the 70s, when this whole area of the performance psychology really didn't even exist. And he started getting me excited about the application of psychology to human performance. And so I started where he was a world-class track and field coach, and I started getting involved, and I fell in love with it. Eventually decided I really would like to try to pioneer, if I could, some contributions in that area. And I opened up a private practice in Denver, then the Center for Athletic Excellence, and then I went to spend 2 years at the Jimmy Connors United States Tennis Center to learn from Connors. Then I spent 6 years at the Nick Bollettieri Tennis Academy, which was like, for me, 2 PhDs. And I began to learn a lot about this because it was the greatest period of player development in the history of tennis. And then I decided I joined with Dr. Jack Groppel, who had his PhD in bioengineering, and we decided we're going to establish the Human Performance Institute. There'd be a science-based approach to human performance, a fully integrated approach. And we started that in 1992. We sold the company in 2008 to Johnson & Johnson. Probably to date, some 400,000 people have gone through the Institute in just about every area of high performance, from medicine, special forces in the military, Navy SEALs, Blue Angels, precision flying team. We had 17 number ones in the world in their sports. And, all kinds of people from medicine, FBI hostage rescue teams, anti-terrorist units. We had world-class chess champions. We had sumo wrestler all the way from Japan, spent 6 months with us. But it was a living laboratory of high performance. It was the most extraordinary. We amassed a staff that was like, we had a beautiful 9-acre campus, and the staff was probably the greatest staff I could ever imagine putting together in performance psychology in an integrated approach. And I stayed on another 6 years to help Johnson & Johnson with the transition. It's now the Johnson & Johnson Human Performance Institute. And I'm now trying to apply all the learnings and insights and science that we acquired during that period to young people, to youth. So I've started the Youth Performance Institute, and helping youth understand the importance of character and how to build a successful life based on all the input that we acquired over multiple decades of, we were really applying the best science we could, and then we were developing scientific protocols that we were testing all the time. And it was quite an exciting adventure.
Yeah, I mean, you just remind me, because I heard you being interviewed, and I can't remember where I heard this interview, but when you were talking about the tennis, and it just fascinated me, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was, but there was the point you were making that what separates the kind of the number ones from the rest, and that they had a routine between points. There was something about between points where they didn't allow the last bad shot to influence the next shot. Can you maybe just go through that? Because I found that fascinating.
Yeah, so this was, I'm a data guy. And so I collected all this data on all the sports from professional hockey, basketball, tennis. I was more involved in tennis, but we had a whole academy there at our institute. And we began to realize that when you watched a match, only about 60 to 70% of the time, the players were actually playing points. 30 to 40% were they actually playing points. And from 60 to 70% of the time, they were doing something else. They were walking from one side of the court to the other. They were changing sides. But no one had ever looked at what was going on inside their heads and how they were actually recovering after that last point, either positively or negatively. So we started to look with a microscope into that, and I developed a whole protocol for helping players. It became known as the 16-second cure because Steffi Graf had the shortest amount of time between points of anyone who was a really world-renowned player. And we developed this, and I think it's probably one of the most popular videos. It's still on YouTube, and it's I think it's been one of the more important contributions I've made to tennis. But it's true in all sports, whether it's hockey. There are periods of pause, the power of pause, I call it, when you can actually take a moment and reset emotionally and mentally, go through a series of specific rituals that help you to be at your absolute best, to be fully engaged and ready to perform at your best. And so that developed a whole arena of the science of recovery. How do people recover after a dose of stress? And so it became a very important part of how we actually trained world-class performers.
So what do they actually do in that? What was the recovery? What do they actually do to recover and not allow it to kind of infiltrate their thinking for the next phase?
So, the whole idea is that you've been involved in a point of some kind or some kind of competitive process. And then now you have a pause, and you could be thinking about the mistake you just made. You can allow your eyes to wander, looking at the crowd, looking over at maybe parents or coaches. And what we learned was that the mind tends to follow the eyes. The best players have very controlled eyes. They also are very careful about where they allow their mind to go, particularly if it's involving any kind of negative stimulus of any kind. So any kind of mistake or upset or anything that would cause them to carry that forward, there is a chemical signature in the body associated with these negative emotions. And if you're focusing on that, your cortisol levels rise, your tension levels rise in the muscles, the frequency of brain oscillations, EEG, tends to increase. All of these things tend to undermine your ability to perform at your best. So taking deep breaths, going back and having your eyes on the strings of the racket, taking a little kind of quick walk in that 25 seconds, and recalibrating so that now you're completely ready to launch into the present moment. And so we would teach routines about that. We'd have them walk with their shoulders back so that there was no indication of any negativity whatsoever after a mistake. They carried what I call the matador's walk. They had a great look. I would spend hours with players on a tennis court teaching them how to walk, how to carry their racket with their racket up rather than hanging down, how to take it out of their dominant hand and to relax their dominant hand and to shake out the tension. So there were little things that often make a big difference over time. And it's become, at the time I did it, people thought I was duly crazy. Now it's mainstream, kind of the way coaches think about the between point time in tennis. So I was very excited that we could pioneer something that actually has legs and
absolutely, yeah, and because I mean, so you look at that, whether it's tennis or golf or any other sport, and the people that are ranked kind of, at the top of that. I mean, the others that are 20 places below, they can hit the ball as hard, hit the ball as accurate. It's not to do with really the skill, because the skill level is pretty level, but it is the mental game, isn't it, that actually separates them.
Well, the mental game plays a huge role, but you cannot you can't underestimate the importance of biomechanics. If you have a subtle biomechanical flaw, most people think, well, that was a mental mistake because you're double faulting every single time under pressure, you start double faulting. But when you look a little closer, you realize that the biomechanical efficiency of that stroke is compromised. And when you get just a little tight, it's not so much that you have to be able to perform even when you're a little nervous. Everybody gets nervous, or even a little angry at times. If you're double faulting constantly when you get a little angry or nervous, it's probably not your head that needs as much fixing as the biomechanics. And you can also, if your fitness is not what it should be, if you haven't hydrated properly before the match and now you're losing a lot of electrolytes, if you haven't the food intake, energy is the result of the union of oxygen and glucose, this Krebs cycle. And if you don't get enough oxygen, which comes from fitness and effective breathing, and you don't have enough glucose to the cells, you're gonna bonk. It looks like you're choking, but what you thought was a mental default actually was a physical default in terms of your ineffectiveness in making sure that you're preparing the cells to ignite at the right time in those precise moments. Emotionally and mentally, it's a very big part of it. And also playing for the right purpose. If you're solely about winning, if you're solely about trophies and championships, you're in for trouble, because there's going to be a lot of disappointment. So we have to really help people understand that a sport like tennis can be leveraged to help you become an extraordinary human being in life. And that no matter if you ever become a world-class player or not, you're actually getting stronger, better, more resilient. You're leveraging the stresses of tennis and the demands of tennis to become a fully functioning human being throughout your lifetime. And if you win a championship, become number 10 in the world, that's all icing on the cake. But if you get the purpose wrong, and you have a very, very, what I would call fragile sense of purpose for why you're playing, it's probably not going to serve you well.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Of course, then when you take what you're talking about, tennis or golf or any other sport, and then you bring it into the corporate world. I mean,
Same,
all the same things apply, which leads us
very same.
beautifully into the book, which is leading with character. And I love the tagline to it: 10 minutes a day to a brilliant legacy. Just when I was actually just kind of thinking about the interview this morning, and obviously legacy. I would say, what's your definition of legacy?
Well, we know for sure that we were born, and we know for sure we're going to die. And between your birth and your death, you're going to leave some kind of impact, for better or for worse.
Mm.
And your legacy is the impact that you had, most importantly, on others. Most people are not going to remember a lot about you, except they will remember how you made them feel. And so often, when we actually look at what the most important priorities in our life really are at the end of our life, really they talk about our treatment of others, our honesty, our integrity, our truthfulness, our respect for others, our generosity, our gratefulness, our humility. Those are kind of the landmarks of really an extraordinary person. And when a person's legacy qualifies them in that space, it's the ultimate compliment for an ultimately successful life.
Absolutely. And what I loved about the book is that, I mean, not only is it a great book and challenging book to read in the sense that it challenges to think, but it's very much a workbook. And as I said, the journal that accompanies it is very much so. It is very much intended to be utilized in that way. Is that obviously is your intent? Because even at the character call outs at the end of each chapter where there's a piece of work and you got to think about it, that was obviously, and it comes back to this intention, because you quote which I love the quote, the Henry David Thoreau said, "For you cannot dream yourself into character, you must hammer and forge yourself one." And that's the work, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you want it, you can have it, but you're going to have to do the hard work, the heavy lifting. And a lot of people, when they think about it, they go, well, I think I have a good character. Well, let's just check it out. And then if you don't have exactly what you thought you had, how are we going to fix it? And that requires, a lot of our character is really the result of a lot of the experiences we had long before we were conscious of what's happening. Our parents, the cultures that we are associated with, our peers, with social media, with all kinds of things. And so one day you awaken and you realize, here you are. Now let's just see, who the heck are you really? Character is who you really are in terms of your treatment of other human beings. It's also who you are in terms of your performance, character, in terms of your focus, your ability to be resilient and positive and so forth. But the ultimate test of a person that we came to understand at the Institute was this moral and ethical space, which for me as a psychologist, a performance psychologist, I had to pinch myself over and over again. Well, how did I end up in this space? Because I didn't have any training. That sounds like philosophy to me. How in the world does this have anything to do with people performing to the upper limits of their talent and skill in extreme high stress environments over time? And I'll tell you how we got there. The data took us there. We began to realize that there was something more important than all the things we were looking at. I'll tell you very simply what we learned. And it is almost astonishing to me still. It's so simple. It's almost like you go, it took you 40 years, Loehr, to figure this out. And it's just this simple. And that is that health ignites performance. Health ignites, we were in the health business. And really, health is physical, it's emotional, it's mental, and all we were doing, and it's spiritual. It's helping people understand how to get healthier in all dimensions. And the one that was the best predictor of sustained success in every arena we were in was spiritual health, which we call character health, and that is your treatment of other human beings, particularly under stress. And that, if you're a company and you have people who are honest, have integrity, who treat people well, fairly, caring about their employees, compassionate, kind, you want those folks to win. you want them at the top. When they scaled the mountain, they didn't do it over dead bodies. They actually built a beautiful kind of trail, a legacy in getting there, and everyone wants you to succeed, continue succeeding. You can get to the top of the mountain by taking shortcuts, by violating every ethical and moral rule that you could get away with, and you can get to the top. But you probably will not find great fulfillment. I call it the hidden scorecard. And you will not probably find yourself sustained because people are really not encouraging, they're not applauding your assault. They're really hoping in some way that you fall from grace.
Yeah. When you talk about that, just one thing that struck me when listening to you there is that where do you stand on the character, where do you stand on this kind of nurture, nature, and choice?
So this whole area of science is called epigenetics, and it's a whole area of research. It's fascinating. And they no longer call it nature versus nurture. We are given a genetic predisposition for all kinds of things, but it is the environment that actually either allows that genetic predisposition to express itself or not express itself. And so there isn't much we can do about the genetic predispositions or gifts that that are coded into our DNA, but we have a lot to do about creating the environment that allows the expression of those things that actually are to our benefit, that we want, to find out how much talent we have, to really discover how far can we go in this search for excellence that I'm really pushing the envelope on. And so, you know, the human beings are separated from the animal kingdom in a very special way. All animals in the animal kingdom, have the capacity for awareness. So if you look at a deer or a bear in the forest, they're very keenly aware. They're very aware, and so are we. We can be very aware of our environment. And they can also be conscious or unconscious. They can be completely unconscious in sleep, and the same with human beings. We can be unconscious or conscious. Nothing special there. We can go into surgery. We can be knocked unconscious in an accident. But what we have is really special. I call it our superhuman. It is actually almost a supernatural capability, is for the brain to actually observe itself. And I call this reflective consciousness or conscious awareness, where we actually can watch ourselves. We can observe what we're saying to ourselves internally with our private voice. We can actually watch from outside what we're doing and say, wait a minute, that isn't right. That's not right at all. So we can actually pause between the stimulus and response and actually choose a response. We can actually make a decision that can change the trajectory of our lives and the lives of a lot of people. And so that nature via nurture and the issue of choice, it's probably our most sacred capability. And it's the one that people don't really work the territory enough and recognize without that, we cannot make self-directed change. We are predisposed to this or that outcome. But if you decide you want to be consciously in control of your life, you can do it by developing your capacity for reflective consciousness, which is uniquely human and the one thing that has no equal. It is like, I would call it the equivalent of Superman or Wonder Woman, because you can do amazing things if you actually reach inside, watch what you're doing. It is the brain literally watching itself work.
Yeah, it's fascinating. In the book, and you kind of touched on it there earlier on, you talk about what I'm quoting you saying, the gradual numbing of moral muscles. And you quote the social psychologist Peter Ditto, is that the motivated reasoning is the tendency to cherry pick facts that support conclusions and beliefs we're invested in maintaining. Is that just a nice way of saying we rationalize our behavior to suit ourselves?
So we are an interesting species. This magnificent neural processor between our ears, this 3 pounds of meat between our ears, is really something. And it's evolved, man's been on the planet for 350,000 years. In the last 50,000, there's been a lot of adaptations to our brains. But the brain exists for one reason, and that is to get you for survival, to help you survive, and to get you what you want and need. So the brain is always trying to figure out what do you need? What do you want? And you have to give it instructions. And that's what's so interesting. And you tend to get back what you program in or load into that neural processor. And there was a brilliant psychologist, actually he was a social psychologist by the name of Leon Festinger, who built an ironclad case for the fact that the brain can fool itself. The brain can dupe itself to make it easier for you. It actually, a lot of people thought this was possible, but he called it cognitive dissonance. And he learned that the brain, we don't really have direct contact with the real world. We like to think we do, but we don't. What we have is data streaming in through our five senses into this neural processor. And then it has to crunch that data and make sense of it in terms of what's already in there. And if there's stuff in there that this new data is somehow not consistent with, it creates conflict. It creates a crisis. And the brain doesn't want that. It doesn't like conflict. It wants to resolve conflict. So it will either purge that data or it will morph it so that it actually fits what's already in there. So we have, I will tell you, the human brain is a fiction-making machine. We are unbelievably good at making crap up to help us feel better about what's going on so that we can get what we want and not feel guilty. And the more you get into this, you look at the research. I have 25 ways in the book that the brain actually hijacks itself so that you don't have to pay a heavy price in terms of guilt, that you can actually do what you want, and motivated reasoning or rationalization or groupthink, all of that play into that unfortunate dynamic. That's the downside. The upside is you can fool your brain into believing things are going on that will help you. For instance, if you say, Dan Jansen, he wrote on his training log every day, I love the 1000. Well, he didn't love the 1000, he hated it. But he programmed that into his brain, and one day he loved the 1000 more than the 500. And he won his Olympic gold medal in the 1000 meter. He wrote 35:99 because he wanted to break the 36-second barrier. And it had never been, everyone says it's like the 4-minute mile, it'll never be broken. He broke it 4 times. If you visualize something vividly, the neurological imprint is indistinguishable from something that actually happened. The brain can't tell the difference. So your brain is actually waiting for instructions from you. You can give it repeatedly. It's called myelination. The more you myelinate highways to carry efficient messages that you want, the brain says, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. But it will also dupe you if you don't use conscious or intentional awareness. It will subvert what you want. You actually become, you say, I'm a good father, and you come home, but you're not a good father. You're irritable, cranky, but then you make some story up. Yeah, well, I've had a bad day. I'm still a good father. And you don't face the truth about what's actually happening because your brain has gotten you off the hook. And that's what this book is all about.
So that also plays to the belief that we don't see the world as it is, we see it as we are.
Totally. We it's really wonderful when you have someone who's really in touch with, there is a real world, but we don't know what the heck it is. Because, the best way to really see this is through the prism of politics. Once you've loaded in a particular belief, whether it's faulty or not, and you get information in there into your brain streaming in that's not consistent, you will just dump that off. You'll say it's complete misinformation, disinformation. You'll morph it so that it fits. You'll challenge it. And because politics and morality are joined at the hip, you're making decisions about what's the best way for human beings to live. If you want to see how crazy the human brain can get, just watch politicians spew the nonsense out there that they're spewing. Sometimes they're not aware of it. Sometimes they are. They're doing it because it's just simply politics. And you don't have to be truthful with politics. You just simply have to win your case. And what is really unfortunate is when we're going to navigate in life, just like getting in your car, if you want to get somewhere, you've got to know where you want to go. You have to have the true coordinates. You have to understand there is a place you're trying to get to. You need to understand where you are now relative to where you want to go, and then you've got to take action. So this notion that truth will set you free is true, but it's hard to get to the truth because our brains just, they're trying to make us feel good all the time, and the brain makes stuff up. So it hijacks our ability to be rational and to actually summon the right emotions. And so it's the only hope we have is to bring this capacity for a reflective consciousness and call ourselves out on it. Say, no, I'm not going there. That is not how I want to run my life. You're making it easier on me, but it's not true. I'm taking this road and I'm going to myelinate this. I would much rather be honest and suffer and realize I didn't do the right things there. I'm not doing it again.
It's interesting to say about politics. And one of the things that's clear, and I was just, as you were talking, that, that transcends, continents, nations, cultures, language, you name it. I mean, even if you look at what's happening currently in Russia, I mean, that is just playing out exactly the same way. There was an exercise in the book that I just found really, really interesting, because I actually did the exercise as I was going through the book, as I did with many of them. But it was the exercise, I just want to ask you the kind of background to it. It was the 6 one-word descriptors that best capture you when you were most proud of yourself, and the similar exercise of the 6 words of how you want to be remembered. And I just thought that they were fascinating, and I just love you just to talk a little bit about those.
So at the Institute, we were always testing certain protocols for how effective they were with people. And 2 of the most powerful of all those that we tested, one was I developed it many, many years ago. It's called Your Best Self. And I began to realize that there was Jim Loehr can be a very special version of himself at times. And it's the version I really like of myself. It's the best I have to offer. And I really like that when that person shows up when I'm under duress or when I'm under stress, that I'm actually able to produce what I would call the very best of who I am comes forward. And so I'm most proud of myself with that. It's not a fantasy. It actually happens. I'm not making stuff up. And people know when I'm in that space because I'm a different person. So I'm going, well, if that's the case, why don't we focus in on that and try to get a higher percentage of our life represented in that space? What's holding me back from being the best version of myself more of the time? So we spent a lot of time with that, and we asked people to describe what were the 6 words that describe you when you're most proud of yourself. And then I would go around the room, let's say there are 30 people in the room, and ask them to read those out loud. They're not embarrassed by that because they're all positive. And the room would be aghast. They believe that everyone copied from everyone else because they all came out all the same pretty much. And it was somehow a connection, the way they treated other people. They were kind. They were patient. They were very, very, they had a great perspective on what was actually happening to themselves and others. They were very calm under stress. They showed great compassion, whatever it is. And that was so surprising to people. And then we would follow that with, all right, now we're going to go to the end of your life. Most of the time, for almost everyone here, you will not have a chance to decide what's going to be carved on your tombstone. I call it the tombstone exercise. And other people decide that for you. But whatever is on there is supposed to be a representative sample of the best part of you. But I'm going to give you the opportunity to actually decide what you're going to have on your tombstone, what will be carved on your tombstone, and not let someone else. And that will, in fact, be what you believe the highest priorities for a successful life will represent. Who would you most need to be to qualify as a success on planet Earth? What is the ultimate life of success according to you? Either in a couple sentences short, you don't have a lot of room on the tombstone, or 6 or 8 words. What would those be? And then I would have people read those again. And it blew everyone away because it sounds like everyone copied from everyone else. And what we found, and what that began to help us understand, was that we are social creatures. And the hidden scorecard that we're all really holding ourselves accountable to is the way in which our honesty, our integrity, we kind of built the basis for the book, that character strengths are the quintessential assets that people have to really live a great life. And so we work back from those. If those are the things you want to have represented on your tombstone, I call that going home. That's how you get home. And for the rest of your life, you're going to have to be, those don't just show up because you like for them to show up. You have to invest energy in them every single day. And hopefully by the end of your life, you'll get very close to getting home. And getting home means you end up at the end of your life where you want to end up.
Yeah, that was just so powerful. And there were so many things. Something that I've taken, and by the way, I have used it with coaching clients since I finished reading the book, because I thought there were 3 great questions. And they were: 1 is what am I chasing? 2, why am I chasing it? And 3, who am I? And who are those I lead becoming as a consequence of the chase?
Yeah.
I think for leaders, they are 3 fantastic questions to ask. And I must say, I have credited you that they are now your lights on mine, but I just think that they're such powerful questions to ask of yourself and in a coaching environment to ask of your clients.
So we were born to chase. We were born to chase in life, to chase something. And, you know, the animal kingdom chases for survival. But that's not enough. We're aware that we're going to die. They are not aware that life is, they don't have existential angst. Well, what am I supposed to do? Because they just assume, even if they're at the very twilight of their life, they assume it's going to go on forever. They just can't, that dog just can't get up the stairs anymore. But this whole notion that we were born to go after something, to survive for what? What are we after? What are we really supposed to be surviving? So I have more kids, and then they have more kids, and they have more kids. What is the purpose of life? Why am I here? What's the meaning of my life, and what I'm going to do with my life to, in a sense, repay this incredible gift that I had for winning the lottery of life? And so you begin to chase something. Some people chase fame. Some people chase money. Some people chase titles and extrinsic rewards of all kinds, because that's what society says is the representation of a truly successful person. And we get hoodwinked. Our brains start getting all about that. So our brains go, oh, okay, so you want titles. So you want to climb, 14ers. So you become obsessed by getting to the top, writing your name on the 14er. And that becomes, but you are becoming something as a consequence of the chase. And more important than what you're chasing is who you're becoming as a consequence of that chase. And is that going to help you get home? And so we try to help people understand that if you're chasing something that's bigger than yourself, it's not about you. Your life should never be about you. It's about what you can do for others. That's how you get a life. And the more you understand that this was a gift that you were given, and you give it away, and by giving it away, you actually you can have a great life of fulfillment and meaning. And who you become in that chase, you become a better, kinder, more compassionate, more driven human being for the right reasons. And so we spend a lot of time in that space helping people understand the power of purpose and the power of really understanding that every chase is going to change you. Make sure you're chasing it for the right reason, and that you're becoming the person that you most want to be, so that you, in fact, will end up where you want to end up in life.
Yeah. Jim, there's so many things in the book, and that's what attracted me to it. There's so many things in the book that just really, even at this stage of my life, and not in the first flush of youth, that made me kind of, you really stop and think and reflect. And I mean, from I know from experience why you got the journal to go alongside it, but I'd love you just to explain it to people of why that is, because it's really important.
So it's so interesting. We tested a lot of different ways of getting things to stick for people. I mean, you can read a book and be moved by it, but rarely does reading a book actually rearrange the furniture between your ears in significant ways. It might make a little shift here, a shift there, and you go, "That was great. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it was good." But then you go on with your life and not a whole heck of a lot changes. And so we wanted something that actually, when you look back on it in 5 years, you go, "That was one of the best things I ever did," because it actually changed things that I thought were important for me to actually recognize I needed change. So we looked at a lot of different strategies, everything from, visualization to, trying to create a habit structure that was very, very minute, getting people to do little tiny rituals and helping them to get, and all these things. The thing that actually had the most extraordinary result was cursive writing with your hand. There's some connection between this prefrontal cortex, this executive function, and the fingers of your hand. And somehow, if I ask you, if I said, if you only had one thing you could do to remember something, what would it be? You'd probably say, I'd write it down. And the reason you write it down is the brain actually records it, and it has a stronger imprint. So we decided to experiment more with the cursive writing and this journal, because most people are not sure what are you supposed to write about. So we made it a prescriptive journal, and it actually gives you something to write about for 90 days and then 150 days if you want to take it even further. And the whole idea is we're developing your capacity for reflective consciousness. We're helping you. What is the template against which you're making decisions that you should or shouldn't do something? I call it a personal credo, that, somehow you've developed something, but you've never really been conscious about it. You've just somehow, yeah, that's right or wrong. But why is that right or wrong for you? Well, I had a parent, I think that's right. I'm not sure where it came from. I don't want you to live your life and use a standard you're not even sure where it came from. I want you to live your life according to what you believe is right for you. And that journal is an opportunity for 10 minutes every day to do some heavy lifting. And I will tell you, it is hard. It is not for the faint of heart. But if there's no discomfort, there will be no growth. This is going to push you outside your comfort zone. It may even push you to get, a personal coach or a therapist to help you, because it's uncovering stuff that is a little messy, to say the truth, to put it mildly. And the reason is that there's stuff here that needs to be looked at. The unexamined life is not worth living. And so you're going to be much more intentional about your energy investments, about who you're going to become and how you're going to get home, because you're going to create it. This is not something that you adopted from someone else, or that you inherited, or you're leasing from someone else. You're not living out your parents' story. This is yours. This is your life, and you're going to live it according to the way in which you decide it should be lived. And to me, that might be the most important imperative for all of us on planet Earth.
Well, I can vouch for the fact that it is not for the faint-hearted. There have been days where, I'll be honest with you, Jim, and I kind of thought, why did I make the commitment to do this? But I tell you something, it is so powerful. It really and truly is so powerful. Jim, I have taken up a lot more of your time than I said I would, but this has just been absolutely fantastic. I've loved it. I've loved listening to what you've got to say. I loved the book, and I was going to say I love the journal. I'm not sure love is actually the word that but But it is certainly revealing.
It's a love-hate deal.
Absolutely. It is a bit of a love-hate deal. Jim, where can people reach you? Where can they find out more about the work that the fantastic work that you do? And we'll put everything in the show notes, but listening now, where can they get to you?
So my website is Jim-Loehr, Loehr.com, Jim-Loehr, Loehr.com. You get all my, I do a lot of these different programs and different things. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can get me on LinkedIn, Jim Loehr, and go right to it. I've written 17 books, and so if you like any of them, you can also figure out, how to get to me from there. But I really appreciate you. What I really enjoy is the fact, John, that you've read it and read it thoroughly, and you've really taken on the challenge. And so our interview is it has much more life and dimension to it, because you actually know what the whole thing is all about. And I appreciate it. And it was fun for me to do this. And I really appreciate your having me as part of your,
well, Jim, it's
been fun.
Jim, it's been a real honor. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to catching up with you again.
Thank you so much, John. Appreciate it.